X17 Plus Pure Speed and the Nike Mercurial Superfly 5 to see what the differences actually are and to find out which of the two top-tier speed boots from the big two brands is the best one. So stay tuned and let's lock in for another boot battle. Let's start off by looking at the uppers here, because while both are relatively flexible, there is no doubt that the one on the Pure Speed is by far the softest and most pliable one. And that is because it has this SpeedSkin upper. It's a synthetic upper that then features a lovely plush foam inner liner. And that means that even straight out of the box, it feels extremely soft and broken in from the moment you put it on. Whereas the Superfly, on the other hand, it does feel relatively soft, and when you break it in, it softens up a lot. But when you put it on your foot, it does feel a little more solid and structured. On the other hand though, it does provide a much better lockdown than you get in the X, so there is a little bit of a difference in that regard. The fit is also slightly different. As you can see, the Superfly 5 is on the narrow side compared to the wider X17 Plus. And with the dynamic fit collar and this all-over Flyknit construction, it becomes a little bit more obvious and you become a little more aware of the fact that you are wearing this sock-like tight construction around your foot. Whereas the X17 Plus, on the other hand, is a little bit more free with its low-cut tech fit construction. But with that said, they both feel lovely and relatively distractionless on your foot. There's also the fact though, however, that the Superfly is a little bit more, should we say, twinkle toes, and you feel a bit more locked in and connected to the boot because of this anatomical sole plate. And if I am to compare this to the racing world, I would say that the Superfly 1 is the Formula 1 car. It is ridiculously fast, but you're also really strapped in, super focused on the performance. Whereas the X17 Plus, on the other hand, is more of a Bugatti Veyron. It still feels incredibly fast, but you also get that luxurious touch of comfort on top of it. On the ball, it is also a little bit different because here, you especially feel the extra foam on the inside of the toe box of the X, because the touch is slightly more soft and dampened than it is in the Superfly. With that said, both boots give you a relatively good, sharp and precise touch on the ball. It's not necessarily an extremely barefoot-like touch, as you do feel that there's a bit of extra material between your foot and the ball, so it has a nicely weighted balance to it in the both of them, but again, with a bit more, should we say, padded elegance in the X. With that said, texture and grip-wise, you do get a little bit more in the Superfly. Again, both do relatively well, so we're talking about soft paddedness here and a little bit more grip in the Superfly 5. In terms of striking, it feels like it's a little bit more bone-to-ball in the Superfly 5, as you feel slightly more connected to it, and that's probably because of the lace cover on the X. Now, of course, it also gives you a slightly cleaner striking surface because it's just one piece. But then again, I mean, the laces are still there. They still make little bumps. And on top of that, it's another layer of material between your foot and the ball. So it is slightly more nimble and slightly more closely connected to the ball in the Superfly 5. But with that said, I wouldn't think twice about wearing either of them in a match. I love being on the ball in both the X and the Superfly 5. Looking at the sole plates, once again, the Superfly 5 feels like the faster of the two. And that is probably because of the nylon sole plate and the bladed studs themselves, because they just give you a more aggressive traction in the ground. You feel more locked in and closer connected to the ground because of the fact that your foot sits a little bit further down inside the plate. And that sensation is very good for when you want to make straightforward accelerations and sprints, and when you want to make sharp, aggressive cuts in the ground as well. But comparing that to the X, it is a bit more well-balanced because of the rounded shape of the studs. The configuration itself is decent for speed, but it drags a little bit less through the ground and feels more smooth when you want to twist and turn on the spot. So again, we're talking super duper hardcore speed, a little bit more of a well-balanced sensation. And the big difference is how locked in you actually feel in the two boots. Let's look at the facts for Superfly 5. It weighs 191 grams and gives you a tight, soft and sock-like fit. The striking is pingy and satisfying, and the touch is grippy, distractionless and very close. You get an anatomical sole plate with bladed studs, but the sock is a little too high. It costs €290 and is fast, strapped in, and feels like an extension of your foot. The X17 Plus Pure Speed weighs 201 grams with a normal to wide fit that's padded but also tight and comfortable. The striking feels damp and clean and responsive with a touch that's elegant and well balanced with good grip. The sole plate is great for movements in all directions, but the boots are a bit difficult to lace up. The price is €300 and that buys you a comfortable, elegant boot that gives you that mental edge. When it comes down to it though, I think it really depends on what you want in your new football boots. I think it's pretty clear that the Superfly 5 undoubtedly has its focus on raw, unadulterated speed, whereas on the other hand, the X17 Plus, which adidas also call Pure Speed, which is kind of funny all of a sudden when we make this conclusion, feels more like it has its focus on you feeling extremely confident on the ball with good responsive movements to follow. So the Superfly 5, it is about raw speed, but it also feels like you're losing out a little bit on the comfort because of this here trade-off that is between raw speed and comfort, and the X kinda has a bit of a better balance in the split between those two things. So which would I choose then? Superfly 5 X17. You know what? I like them both, but in the end, I think I'm gonna go for the X17 Plus Pure Speed. But what about you? Which would you choose, Superfly or X? You should let me know in the comment section right down below. Also, don't forget to subscribe by hitting the green bubble somewhere over my head. Leave me a like if you had a good time and spread the word by sharing the video with your friends. And with that said, I'm signing off. Cheerio.